concerned, but like I'm not like exuding frenzy. And as to what Cuba's doing next, I would look at what you know, Prime Minister, President Miguel Diaz-Canel said today. There's a Telesur article, I'll just send it to you, that summarizes his remarks pretty well. And I think that it's good to sort of like, like try and go to the source with some of these people in terms of just like seeing what the, Cuban ministers and people are saying today. And I think that American media, because we'll call stuff, like authoritarian, and we use those words not to actually describe a system in an honest or nuanced way, but because it's a way to negate and treat anything that they might say as suspect. And it's sort of like the challenge to everybody is to kind of like see past that and push past that to try and like consider the perspective of the country that we are nakedly launching such a brutal campaign against.
Yeah. By the way, with respect to the Cuban protests, the United States appropriations budget just allotted $20 million to the democracy projects in Cuba. And of the funds made available pursuant paragraph, not less than $5 million shall be made available for programs to support free enterprise and private business organizations, people-to-people educational and cultural activities. And for purposes of paragraph 2, the activities described in paragraph shall be considered democracy programs pursuant to section 7032C of this act, except that none of the funds made available under such paragraph may be used for assistance for the government of Cuba. So the irony of a lot of Americans trying to weaponize the protests that are happening right now, which are legitimate, it seems. I don't think it's like every time a fucking protest occurs in a country that America considers or that leftists consider to be like socialist or socialist adjacent, I don't immediately go, oh, CIA op, okay? I do think that people are probably frustrated. But the people are not demanding, please privatize our industries immediately. I would like to, instead of rely on the government, I would like to rely on free enterprise and capitalism. They want more government help. Like, that's what they're protesting. They're protesting for government help. Now, some of them might be protesting for free enterprise or what they understand is going to be more beneficial for them, but they want fucking food. They're not saying like, end communism. Because when you're hungry and you want more food, you're not going to be thinking about the ideological disagreements that you might have with the current government that you exist under. You just want fucking food.
Yeah.
So interesting that America is giving $20 million again to democracy programs in Cuba, and those programs are to support free enterprise and private business organizations.
And that's, by the way, just the money that is, on the books for what it's worth. I think that like one thing I would want to emphasize also is that, there's a lot of dark money swirling around this stuff at all times. I'll give one example. I don't think it's necessary to like name the group just offhand, but like they're also just because it's like alphabet soup. But the group, for example, this past February, a bunch of Bob Menendez and a bunch of other political heavyweights, Rafael Diaz-Balart, the mayor of Miami. Although it should be noted, being the mayor of Miami is not like being the mayor of New York. The mayor of Miami is a more figurehead position. So that guy just is like his job is to just be annoying on in the media, at which he succeeds marvelously. And they had this event in February, and Bob Menendez streams in or whatever, and the guy who organizes it is a lawyer in private practice. And I look up his foundation, and it's not a registered nonprofit. It doesn't file anything about who it's disclosed to. Like you have these groups that operate, seemingly large institutions and that are connected to, groups that do nakedly take money from the National Endowment for Democracy. One of the funding measures that's approved in the government, much like the one illustrated in the in the tweet you have up on the screen. And so it's like there's this, I guess the way to put it is that it's like, we have all these, like connections that we see the surface right here and in the language of the legislation, but it's not the whole picture. We're not getting the whole like picture of it, and that should be a point of concern. I think it's because it's dark money affects all parts of American political life. So there is like it's to the point about like not immediately assuming every protest is American astroturfed and so on. It's also like we should look at, and try to make a point of seeing, and I hope that, journalists are in the coming days, are making the same kind of scrutiny of, what are the American operations like, active in these countries that might have some relationship to
I'm
what's
sure
going
they'll
on.
do that. Actually,
Oh,
I think
100%.
Glenn Greenwald is too busy. I don't know, getting mad at like a trans anarchist on Twitter to maybe offer some coverage to things like that. But those are more important subjects to cover, if you ask me. So I think that's what we're doing with like the left adjacent best investigative reporters on the left.
Yeah.
So who knows? But I
Yeah.
certainly am not waiting on Jake Tapper to or anyone at CNN or MSNBC to offer broad coverage to American democratization programs in Cuba.
I mean, it is going to be, I think, a very like it's you know this is a political issue that like is very difficult to talk about historically because people don't know the truth, right? Like it would be a lot easier to defend the Cuban Revolution if we said, hey, it turns out Fidel Castro was not eating babies. They were actually teaching people to read, and we tried to kill the people teaching poor people to read because we did not like the way in which they nationalized industries and so on. Like, to make it a little, like that's like the cocktail napkin version of this or whatever. And I think once you start presenting people with the truer version of events, and you tell them, well, no, this is what actually happened, and it helps form the basis for a better understanding of like, well, why do things work the way they do today? Because it's I mean, I guess to me, it's like these sorts of like it's all this like subterfuge and like like what I can only describe as like this dark energy that's meant to cast a shadow over all this. I guess one of the advantages of I am fundamentally very optimistic about people's ability to kind of like see past the bullshit and really see the reality of the situation. And I'm not optimistic about the Democratic Party or anything, but like I believe in the capacity of people to force unwilling people with power to do stuff. And, I think that there are millions of people in Cuba whose lives, would be a lot better off for it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Noah, thank you so much for coming on, brother. This was an absolute treat. A lot of people are saying you're a tanky and that, you're not an incredible source of information. I'm just kidding. Some people are saying that in the chat. What do you have to say to them?
I have to say to them, Blowback Season 2 is now available on all podcasts, not podcasts, airing weekly. If you want to listen to the whole show, Stitcher.com/premium, sign up for a monthly plan, use the promo code Blowback. But
Hell
otherwise,
yeah.
Monday mornings, it'll be in your feeds. And if you have complaints, don't send them to me. Just kidding. I
Send them to
am
Brandon.
grateful for anybody who listens.
Send them to Brandon.
And what about Brendan?
I'm saying send him to Brandon instead.
No, I want to give him a break. He's done a lot this season. Like his soundtrack, it fucking bangs, and that's also going live on the 30th. So I'm very much excited to also have that out in the world too.
Okay. Yeah. And yes, as Noah already mentioned, you can find Noah at wait, how do you? Dude, I always fuck up your.
Yeah, I'm just on at NKULW.
Yeah, it's really good. Really easy to remember Twitter name you got there, Noah.
Once upon a time, there was a character limit that mattered, and the ats were included in it. And so I guess this Zoomers won't. Your audience probably doesn't remember this era because they wouldn't use Twitter then. Like
Yeah,
they don't use it
140
now.
character era.
Yeah, and so I don't think I've ever been accused of not being long-winded. So naturally, I had to make space for my long-ass tweets.
Okay, well, people are spamming right there. You can find them there. You can find them on Blowback. Blowback Season 1 was about Iraq, and Blowback Season 2, which is out now, is about Cuba and American propaganda, American involvement in Cuba. And his microphone will be better on the podcast, so don't worry about that. Definitely check that out. Thank you for coming on, Noah.
Thanks.
All right, peace, brother.
Peace.
Okay, that was Noah Colwin. Friend of the show, Noah. He's great. I know that chat was mostly focusing on all the wrong things as usual, hyper focusing on dumb shit like the microphone or whatever, or attacking other chatters. But I hope some of you, at least out of the 30,000 people that were in here the entire time, hope some of you actually learned a thing or two. Um, this is part of the reason why it's so difficult to have fucking guests on. Oh my god. But yeah, no, Noah's the man. I think one thing that he neglected to mention though, throughout the entire interview was that top of the hour came and went by, and a 60-second ad break is necessary. So, you know, I'm gonna run that, and if you want an uninterrupted broadcast experience, obviously you can subscribe for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime, obviously. And yeah, I'm gonna run the ad now. You can use an ad block or a VPN as well. So here's the ad break now. We're gonna keep watching this video about Red Scare propaganda, okay? And then we'll move on to some other stuff. All right, let's do it.
Socialist and communist countries have had among the fewest. That should tell you all you need to know about the Victims of Communism Foundation. It's a disgusting, disingenuous, capitalist propaganda outlet that dishonors the memory of those it claims to remember. What this legislation hopes to achieve, besides fully rewriting actual history, is to have guest lecturers from blatantly anti-communist front groups come to schools and inject McCarthy-era Cold War rhetoric into the minds of American students, starting them on the track to become obedient, terrified little worker drones when they complete their state-mandated propaganda education. I can say I agree with DeSantis on one thing. Teaching American history is critical. That's why I am so opposed to this new initiative. It doesn't teach history. It dredges up the worst aspects of the Red Scare and tries to indoctrinate children with bizarre, outdated, and flat-out false pro-America anti-communist propaganda. At the end of the day, socialists like me aren't asking for much. We think it's important to have an honest reckoning of America's role in world history, the good and the bad. We shouldn't just leave out the parts that reflect poorly on the world's most powerful nation. We should be able to confront difficult history and say, you know what? Yeah, that was wrong, and work to correct it. We should be able to soberly assess the failures of our current economic system and be willing to try new ideas. But unfortunately, I don't see that happening anytime soon. We seem to be experiencing the first wave of extreme reaction to capitalism's decline. Its staunchest defenders circling the wagons around a fake mythos, launching actual indoctrination campaigns, and attempting to reignite the Red Scare, a period widely considered as one of the most misguided, dystopian, and un-American in history. On the bright side, this whole campaign is reminiscent of DARE, which I'm sure people my age remember from their time in school. The idea was to teach kids that drugs were literally going to kill you immediately, and that they made you a bad person. Unsurprisingly, that approach didn't work, and it got otherwise apathetic kids interested in drugs. That's just how kids are. They love to do the things grown-ups say are bad. So in this case, if we're lucky, in a few years we'll have middle schoolers in Florida handing out bootleg copies of The State and Revolution at recess. It's funny to think about, but in all seriousness, this kind of reactionary legislation is a big problem. It indicates a severe rightward shift in American politics, and I think there's more on the way. The American people need to decide what they stand for. Is it ahistorical and xenophobic fairy tales about an America that never existed? Or is it the belief that all humans are created equal? That economic ideas are meant to be challenged? And that progress does not have to be at the expense of human life and dignity? Capitalism leads us down the former road. I think we should choose the latter. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that this kind of content is made.
The goal of DARE was the government to teach all kids all about drugs. Like literally, they need someone to sell to. Okay, dude. What? A little bit of theory next. It's a 24-minute video about Engels, socialism, utopian, and scientific. Are you fucking insane, dude? Do you want everyone to fucking fall asleep, dude? We're not doing that. Like, I do a little bit of fucking. I add a little bit of theory, and all of a sudden, the geeks. They lose their shit. They're like, oh, dude, it's time. Anyway, Lauren Boebert said Biden's statement on what's happening in Cuba failed to condemn communism or socialism. Imagine being afraid to condemn the two most harmful ideologies because you might anger your base, who clearly now embraces those ideologies. Every day, every goddamn day, I wake up and wish for an America that exists, unfortunately, only in the dreams of Republicans. Okay? Every fucking day. I just wish that Joe Biden actually abolished ICE, that he was a Marxist, or that the American government was overtaken by Marxist infiltrators. How sweet would that be? Can you imagine the Democratic Party that is currently debating whether or not to expand Medicare coverage to 55-year-olds? A piece of legislation, an expansion that is so broadly popular that even Hillary Clinton added it onto her 2016 campaign, is currently being discussed. Okay? That's Marxism. That's socialism, to expand government-provided healthcare to 55-year-olds. Like, expand it all the way down, lower the eligibility age to 55. Really? Those are the communists, dude? The communists who gave up on $15 minimum wage, student debt relief, no solution on the housing crisis, no criminal justice reform, no universal health care measures. That's the communist government. If it's so popular, why don't states just vote it in? I kind of want to learn, says leftier than thou. I don't understand how you can live in the United States of America and maybe, I guess, live under a rock and not recognize that we do not have a representative democracy, that we do not have a democracy at all, and that these sorts of things are not voted in by referendums. And even if there were referendums in particular, they could still be very easily bastardized in favor of capital owners with multi-million-dollar marketing initiatives, multi-billion-dollar marketing initiatives if need be, that manufactured consent is so pervasive and so powerful in America that people literally think that Fidel Castro eats babies. And the reason why you never think about nationalization of the extraction industry or nationalization of natural resource extraction is always paired up with like brutal communist autocracy, and never countries that are robust and viable functioning social democracies like Norway. There is a particular reason for it. There is a reason why we never compare ourselves and our social safety nets to other comparable OECD nations. Okay? We only compare ourselves to countries that we have personally had a hand in fucking up. Okay? Well, hasn't Norway got oil as a safety net? I mean, okay. The countries that we routinely look towards as like really horrible places to live in, those countries are also oil rich. For example, Venezuela. So new Donny O'Sullivan video, Hogwatch. We're moving into that. But before that, this is the last video I'm going to look at with respect to what's going on in Cuba. I want to hear from the Brain Trust at Fox and Friends, okay? I want to hear what Steve Ducey, Ainsley Earhart, and Brian Kilmeade have to say about what's going on in Cuba. Ryan Grimm. Calling a bunch of random dudes with guns and boats to just sit outside of Cuban territorial waters to send a message is the kind of dumb shit that gets people killed. I hope, as crappy as Florida politics can be, that the state or federal government will step in on it. Looks like a guy out of Miami-Dade named Ozdani Velaz, who identifies himself as IG, as the owner of Velaz Contractors, organizing some kind of armada to go to Cuba and do something. Calling for a bunch of dudes in boats to sit outside of Cuban territorial waters. Wow, dude. There's a spot called the Bay of Pigs that has a nice landing zone they could try. Wow, I can't believe... Bay of Pigs 2 Electric Boogaloo, dude. This is literally what they did in Venezuela too, by the way. Yeah, Bay of Pigs 2 will be renamed Bay of Hogs after the porky hogs that are in support of it. Love it. This is great. Ryan Grimm, who's if you want to email him, you can go to ryangrimm@gmail.com. Click on that link. Wait, what? That's
Ryan
crazy. I love that. You guys are such dumbasses, dude. I forget who did this, but it's such a dumb thing that, like, anyone who clicks on Ryan Grimm's email accidentally will be redirected to twitch.tv/HasanAbi. He's had that for months. Dude, I told him. I literally told him that it redirects. A plea for hashtag SOS Cuba donations via PayPal warns not the right hashtag Cuba or Cubans to avoid funds getting blocked. This is a real world example of how U.S. backing sanctions limit COVID relief to Cuba. Huh, interesting, guys. But I thought the sanctions were super targeted to Cuban officials, and also there was no issues with like medical supplies getting through. That's weird. What a strange situation. Man, that's wild, dude. But yeah, the Batista numbers I brought up are important to understand because, like, one of the main criticisms of the Cuban Revolution from, like, expats, or not expats, but, like, Cuban reactionaries living in America who are literally, like, some of the most psychotic Republicans, and younger Cubans in the chat will also admit this. I lived in Miami. I will tell you, okay? Older Cubans are a fucking... They are just, oh my God, okay? They absolutely despise every other Latino population, immigrants. They fucking love shitting on Mexicans. They love shitting on everyone else. They are overwhelmingly Republican, vote Republican, racist as fuck, just all sorts of shit. And think that, like, you know, the postal service and healthcare is communism.